Well, I love to practice loud exercises, but the people in the house, they don't want to hear it. In fact, they get downright irate when I start doing this. They consider it a personal insult, like I'm trying to annoy them. But in fact, I'm not trying to annoy them, and my guitar practice has nothing to do with them. It's actually just me wanting to practice really annoying sounding things. And so what should I do? One of the things that I could do is to mute this guitar so that it's quieter and I can practice quieter. And that is what we're going to talk about in this video. There's 3 different ways, 4 different ways even, to practice more quietly by muting your guitar. But first, if you're needing something new and fresh in your practice, then may I recommend the book of 30 fun and charismatic pieces for classical guitar. It's got notation and it's got tabs, fingerings, and listen links. So everything that you need to have some new spice to your practice. So you can find the link to that below. And so now let's talk about muting the guitar. Well, if you would like to mute your guitar, it helps to understand how your guitar makes sound, because then you can stop it from doing that. So to begin with, we vibrate the strings by playing them, right? How does this actually work with the guitar? Well, the vibrations go through the bridge, this part right here where the strings end, and vibrate the top of the guitar. Now that top of the guitar, it vibrates the air inside the guitar, which then pushes out, and this is a big resonator chamber, and then it pushes it out through the hole. And so there are a few different ways that we can stop the sound from being so loud. So the first option that we have is to mute the actual strings. And there are a few different ways that you can do this. Number 1 is a sponge. So here I have a piece of sponge. I just cut this off of a sponge. Cut a strip with a pair of scissors. And what you can do then is just put it under the strings, slide it back down to the bridge, and now the strings don't vibrate so freely. And so you have no sustain to it. You can still hear the pitches, but everything is very short. Boom, 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 instead of big long notes. So we kill the sustain, and that's how this makes this into a muted guitar. It's similar to the pizzicato technique, where you actually put your palm down, the side of your palm, and then play with your thumb or your other fingers. It does the same thing as the pizzicato, but you can actually move your hand around. You can strum and do anything that you would like to do. And the sponge is really nice because it fits in the case so well. You can just leave it in your case whenever you need it. There you have a mute. Now another option for this same thing is the ever useful sock. And so you can just grab a sock, a stocking or anything, piece of fabric, and just stick it under there. And that will do the same thing. If you want it more, you can fold it in half, but you can just put it in there, and then you have very muted guitar. And so this is a great practice tool. Now, one of the things that you can also do with this sock, and I have this in black, but not in a nice colorful sock, is you can cut the toe out of the sock and then use it as an arm sleeve. So then in the summertime, when you don't want to sweat onto your guitar, then you just do this, you put it up over your forearm, and then that just protects the side of your guitar. It lets you slide and you're not sitting there sweating onto your guitar. So the sock is actually a very practical item to have in your guitar case. Now, another way that you can soften your guitar, that you can mute your guitar, is to cover the sound hole. This is the sound hole, and so you can cover it. Now, some humidifiers and other items actually will sit in there and have a nice little groove so that you can very easily put them in there, and they're very convenient for muting your guitar in this way. But I'm just to demonstrate, we'll use a piece of paper. Also, if you have a really resilient finish, you can use a piece of tape on here and just tape it on. But I'm not going to do that now. But you can listen. Here it is without and then with. Not a huge difference here. There we go. So it does mute the strings. And the thicker this is, then the less sounds will actually come out of that hole. Now you're still vibrating the top of the guitar. The strings are still fully vibrating, and they are putting all of that vibration into the top of the guitar. So while the air is not being pushed out from the resonator box, you are still vibrating the whole guitar. The benefit of that is that you get your sustain. It doesn't mess with the sound, so you still have a nice long sustained sound instead of the thumpy sound like we use with the sponge or the sock. Method number 3 is to actually put soft goods into your guitar. So you have to be careful because you don't want to mess up the bracing and jar anything in there, especially if you have electronics in there. Be very careful. But you can put soft goods. A towel. I have a towel right here, and I'm going to stick it in this guitar and let you hear it. But you can also use socks and undies, anything soft, anything relatively small. You don't want to put like a comforter in there, but you can put something in there and it will soften and deaden the sound. So first off, you'll want to loosen your strings. I've already loosened these somewhat. And then very carefully, bit by bit, you feed it in to the guitar. So once you get tuned back up, then now the guitar just isn't going to vibrate as much. You're not pushing as much air. And so it is just softer. It's not completely quiet. You can still hear it, but it's way, way softer. I mean, it's still gonna be, if you wanna play it loud, you can still get some volume, but it definitely brings it down by probably half. Depending on what type of material you use, how full you fill it, you're still vibrating the strings, but you don't have the top vibrating as much, and you don't have the air being pushed through. All right, well, 2 more quick ways to play quietly and mute your guitar. The first is to actually just get a practice guitar or a travel guitar that doesn't make very much sound. So this is a Soloette. There are many different brands on the market, but this is these top arms come off so that it compresses into a small bag for travel. But it also is very quiet, so you can practice very quietly with it because it has no resonator box to push the sound out. So that's another option for you if you're really serious about quiet practice. And the last method I'll mention here is perhaps the best one of all, and that is to play quietly. It sounds so obvious, but playing quietly is actually a skill. So to be able to play in time, in rhythm, but very quietly is a skill. On the guitar, we can only go so loud. We can max out our sound. We can get our absolute loudest fairly easily. But we have a long way to go on the bottom side. So we can actually, most of us can add so much more depth and interest to our music if we can get better at playing at this low dynamic level. So just practicing playing quietly is another way to do it. If you want to practice your scales, practice them very quietly. Still in perfect rhythm, still with the sound that you want. Everything going, don't slow down or mess with anything just to get quiet, but just play quietly and do everything that you would do, only make it very, very quiet, very low dynamic. So that is a great way to practice, especially if it's a once in a while thing. You don't want to always play that way because then that would become your style of playing. That's what happened with Wes Montgomery, the jazz guitarist, reportedly, that he would come in after a long days of work. He would come in at night, late at night, his wife and child were sleeping, and he would want to play his guitar, and so he would just practice really quietly with the meat of his thumb, and that became his sound. And so it gave him this signature sound. We don't necessarily want that because it would be limiting to our playing of classical guitar music, but it's still a great thing to do partly or some of the time. So these have been several ways of playing quietly, muting your guitar for when that needs to happen. And if you need something to play with your muted guitar, then consider getting this book of 30 fantastic pieces. You can download it below, and it's got tabs, it's got notation, everything you need to play some lovely music in your practice. And with that, have a lovely day, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.